We are truly living in one of the biggest vibe shifts in the, probably not even one of the biggest vibe shift in all of the post-World War II world. We are living in the we are living at the point when the post-World War II era is crumbling. That's what we're living in. We are seeing this World War II era crumbling right before our eyes. It was already crumbling. It's been crumbling for years, don't get me wrong. But we are seeing whatever is left of it just kind of going away. It truly is just dissipating right before our eyes. We are experiencing the biggest vibe shift in the history of the post-World War II era. Literally seeing the revival of Nazism, eugenics, all this crazy shit coming right back. And it's no longer, well, democracy is important. It's no longer, well, we will never side with extremism. We will never side with Nazism. No, that's not what it is anymore. It's, we're going to side with Nazis. We're going to side with monsters. And America has never really had a serious issue with this because they were doing it back during the Cold War. But at least they tried to hide that shit. At least they hired that Brown guy. What was his name? Von Braun. They hired that guy for freaking NASA. They tried to hide that shit. They brought in the guy who was experimenting on Polish girls at the Ravensbrück camp. They tried to hide that shit. They brought him to San Antonio, gave him a six-digit figure salary, and they had him work for the Air Force Base. I forgot his name, but he was a German scientist, Nazi scientist, who was infecting Polish girls with gangrene in the Ravensbrück concentration camp. Read up on it. All of a sudden, he was in San Antonio, Texas, working, earning himself a six-digit figure salary, annual salary, working for the U.S. government. He was a murderer. He was a murderer who murdered people by infecting them with gangrene. And they tried to hide it. Now it's like, why are we hiding anything? They're not hiding anything anymore. Al-Qaeda? Oh, yes, Al-Qaeda. That used to be the big enemy. Al-Qaeda is now running Syria. Oh, the Ottoman Empire. They did the Armenian genocide. Ottoman Empire is back. They're running Syria. I mean, really? I mean, how could you? This is why I said in my stream last week, I said, if you're not terrified, you're not paying attention. And the problem is no one's paying attention. Everyone is talking about, oh, how great this is. Oh, they got RFK. Okay, fine. Yeah, that's great. RFK is great. I hope RFK gets rid of red dye from food because that shit causes pancreatic cancer. I wish RFK gets rid of all the fucking poisons in the food. Completely agree with that. But there's a bunch of other shit that's happening and people just don't want to see it. And they know that they can get away with it. In fact, they are so knowledgeable that they can get away with it that the guy he does the Nazis because he knows he can get away with it. Let's go back to this article here, boys. There's no women here. There's no women listening to this shit. It's a bunch of freaking lonely-ass millennial dudes playing video games. Let's be real here. Man, I would love to make this stream just talking about video games. I would love it. Like, I just want to talk about video games for hours. I don't even want to talk about geopolitics. I want to talk about Elden Ring and how I'm getting close to defeating Malekith. I'm still stuck in that damn level. He did not mention the party, the Alternative for Deutschland or AfD, by name, but made a direct reference to the long-standing agreement by mainstream German politicians to freeze out the group, parts of which have been formally classified as extremist by German intelligence. Now, since the end of the Second World War, the unwritten rule in German politics has been that you do not make a coalition with far-right parties. This has been the rule. Well, that rule got broken recently when Mr. Merz decided to join the AfD in Germany. So what Mr. Vance is saying here is all you German parties need to work with the AfD. So he's encouraging a coalition to be formed with the AfD because he wants the AfD to become powerful. Mr. Vance said, there is no room for firewalls. The AfD has surged to second in the polls with its call to crack down on immigration, and its members have a history of use of Nazi language and anti-Semitic and racist comments, along with plots to overthrow the federal government. Yeah, I read about this. Yeah, there was some kind of a plot to do a coup, and some of the people involved in the coup, or at least one of the persons involved in the coup, was an AfD member. Mr. Vance did not note that baggage, nor did he mention any extremist elements of anti-immigration political parties. Without naming any parties specifically, he cast the AfD and its counterparts across Europe as legitimate vessels of voter anger over the millions of refugees who have entered the European Union from the Middle East. Now, here is something else that we have to keep in mind. There was an article that was published on Haaretz recently that made a really interesting observation. It said that the demon has been released. Now, I think he said something like the genie has been released from the bottle or whatever. Well, genie comes from the Arabic word jinn, which is the word that is used for demons. So when you watch that Disney movie and it says Aladdin rubbed the lamp and then the genie came out, he was talking to a demon. And when the genie said, I'll give you 3 wishes, Aladdin, you can have whatever you want. And he says, I want to be the Sultan. He is asking a demon to make him powerful. So Aladdin sold his soul to the devil to get anyway. The jinn is out of the lamp. All right. The demon is out of the bottle. Now, what did the article mean by this? What the author from Haaretz was saying was that by the United States bringing up mass deportations as if it's a great thing, the United States has now softened or has now normalized language in favor of mass deportations. Now, I'm not saying that America is going to do a genocide or anything like that, but what I am saying is that the language has become normalized. Mass deportations. Now, the Nazis in Europe, the far rightists, the ultranationalists, whatever you want to call them in Europe, in Germany, they want to do mass deportations. So America essentially gave them its blessing. If you want to do mass deportations, go right ahead. The AfD not only wants to do mass deportations of refugees, the AfD wants to do deportations of naturalized German citizens. They want to deport Germans who are citizens, people who became German citizens. They want to deport them. Certain people who became German citizens, get rid of them. And I fear that this ideology, this type of rhetoric is going to escalate into something very, very dangerous. That's what I fear. And I think that this could get seriously out of hand to the point where we're going to see bloodshed, to the point where there's going to be blood. And that's the biggest thing that I fear. I could be wrong, but that's the biggest thing that I fear. So it says here, German leaders across party lines brittled at the speech. They immediately rejected Mr. Vance's suggestion that they should drop their firewall against the AfD, pointing to past comments by AfD members in support of the National Socialists or Nazis. This is our business, said Thomas Silberhorn, a member of parliament for the Christian Social Union, the Bavarian sister party of the Christian Democrats. My message to the U.S. administration is German extremists who explicitly refer to National Socialism, part of the AfD, are clearly anti the U.S. that liberated us from National Socialism. And he's right. Mr. Silberhorn is correct. He's saying if you... I don't understand. It's amazing that people have accused me of being anti-American. You believe me when I say this, it's the truth. People have accused me of being anti-American for expressing my opinion against this ideology, against these types of movements. Have we forgotten World War II? I have these smart asses who come on here and they say things like, have we forgotten the Muslims and all the problems they commit? Have we not remembered World War II? Have we forgotten World War II? Have we forgotten Nazism, National Socialism, Hitler, all that shit? It's amazing. The war that has been talked about more than any other war is ignored. Completely ignored. That's how crazy people are. And if you support Nazis, you are anti, as this gentleman said, you are clearly anti the U.S. that liberated us from National Socialism. And why in the hell are the Russians backing these people? You say, well, they don't know that they're Nazis. Bullshit. Bullshit. I am an average person. I'm not a politician, not powerful. I'm not influential, nothing like that. Back in 2016, I decided that I was going to read about the AfD. This is when it began. This is when my research began on this party. 2015, I heard about the AfD. I heard about the AfD 10 years ago. AfD. And I thought, wow, they're really good. They're fighting against this Muslim immigration stuff. Great. Then something happened in 2016. I decided, you know what? I'm going to read about these people. I'm going to read about them. I'm not going to just sit here and say, oh, they're great, and not research them. I'm going to research them. And I spent hours and hours and hours and hours. I never forget it. I will never forget it, my friends. I was sitting at my desk, and I stayed up all night. I was fueled by potato chips and coffee. And I stayed up all night reading about the AFD, writing about them. And I couldn't believe what I was reading. I thought, oh my God. Guys, this is insane. This party, they have Nazi roots. They're far right. It opened up my eyes. It opened up my eyes. And I never forget it. I stayed up all night. The sun rose up. And I remember I didn't get any sleep at all. And my mom saw me and I said, let's have breakfast. So we went to a diner, a local diner. And my mom and I sat there and we ate. And I was telling my mom about all the stuff that I read. And I spent like 2 hours explaining all this stuff to my mom. Like, Mom, we're seeing literally the revival of Germany. I told her everything. I was like, we are seeing the revival of German militarism, nationalism, everything. Spent like 2 hours and a half talking about this. And I said, and I brought up the Goths. I said, the Goths sacked Rome. They rose up. They tried to take over the Byzantine Empire. They tried to invade Constantinople. They don't talk about this, but everyone says, oh, the 1453 Turkish takeover. They don't talk about how the Goths tried to take over Constantinople. They almost took over Constantinople. I talked about World War II and all this stuff. And I said, World War II, the Germans. I said, the Germans are trying to come back. And I said, they are using this refugee crisis to revitalize and revive nationalism. And I remember talking for hours about this. And I never forget it. After I was done rambling for hours, this guy who was sitting in front of us gets up. And he's with his girlfriend. He's a young guy. He had to have been maybe a little bit older than me, maybe around my age. He was a millennial. And he was eating with his girlfriend in one of the tables in front of us. He gets up with his girlfriend, walks past me, and he says, keep doing what you're doing, man. I was like, it was a little bit shocking because people usually don't agree with me on this type of position that I have. But he said, hey, keep doing what you're doing. And I looked at him and I said, what? What are you talking about? And he said, I was listening to you the whole time. And he said, yeah, you're doing great work, man. Keep going. It was like a sign from God. It was so strange. That never happens, ever. Ever. That has never happened to me. World War II has not been ignored. It's been revived. You're correct. You are indeed correct, Mr. Farrell. But it's being forgotten in the sense that its principles, or the principles that we have learned from World War II, are being not ignored. Well, ignored, yeah. They're not forgotten, but they are being ignored. Right? There's a difference between being forgotten and being ignored. We remember it, but we don't care about the principles that we can learn from that history. And I will say, a great line from someone from back in the past. We don't know exactly who said that. There's a number of people that this quote has been attributed to, but it is a great, very wise and astute quote nonetheless. And that is, the one thing that we learn from history is that people do not learn from history. Boris Pistorius, the German defense minister and a member of the governing Social Democrats, deviated from his planned speech on Friday afternoon to rebuke Mr. Vance. If I understood him correctly, hold on, I gotta do the accent. If I understood him correctly, he is comparing parts of Europe with an authoritarian regime. This is not acceptable, Mr. Pistorius said, drawing sustained applause. This is not the Europe, not the democracy where I live, damn it. Verdammt it. No, nein, you will not come here and tell me these things. Nein. Germany has been the most successful major European power at shutting its hard-right party out of power, along with France, where a group of rival parties engaged in strategic voting last summer to deny the hard-right National Rally a parliamentary majority. But that's democracy, though, right? In a democracy, in a European democracy, you have the position, you have the opportunity to do those coalitions to gain power and to defeat your enemies. And If the other parties did that against the National Rally Party of Marine Le Pen, or if they did that against the AfD, I mean, that is their right. I don't see tyranny. I just see the democratic process that's very common in Europe being observed. And the fact that Vance said that this shouldn't happen kind of shows that he himself is anti-democratic. And anyone who supports the AfD hardcore like this is anti-democratic. If you support somebody who praises the Third Reich, I just don't see how you can be democratic. They want to use democracy for their ends. You know, they want to use democracy as a means to an end so that they can take power, and democracy is only a tool so they can have full power. Other firewalls have fallen around Europe, including in the Netherlands, Hungary, and Italy. And Austria, the hard-right Freedom Party has been part of federal coalitions and appeared set to lead its next government. Yeah, so in Austria, which is another scary country, the far right is winning big time. You have the Freedom Party. I've talked about the Freedom Party. There's a video on my YouTube channel about the Austrian Freedom Party. I've written articles about the Freedom Party. And one of the creepiest things I've ever heard in regards to the Freedom Party is that a number of their members were caught singing some Waffen-SS theme song. Yeah, singing the song of the Waffen-SS. And the Austrian Freedom Party, they want to bring back the Reich. They do. They want to bring back the Reich. They've said this. They've made this clear. They want to bring back. They want to reunite Berlin and Vienna. They want to bring back the Reich. That sounds like the Anschluss. Sounds like they want to bring the Anschluss back. Mr. Vance is now the second figure in the Trump administration who has tried to chip away at the efforts to isolate the far right ahead of the German elections next Sunday by attempting to stigmatize the AfD. Yep. So they want to. So this is the thing. They're destigmatizing a bunch of things, apparently. They're destigmatizing the Nazi salute, and they're destigmatizing these people. It's insane, guys. It really is. The billionaire Elon Musk, a top advisor to Mr. Trump, endorsed the AfD last year in a post on social media. He has publicly interviewed its chancellor candidate, Alice Weidel. In an address to party members this month, Mr. Musk said Germany has, quote, too much focus on past guilt. We all know what he means by that. Cue in Erica. Guys, he's talking about the Holocaust. Too much focus on the Holocaust. And that perfectly aligns with what the AfD believes in. With Bjorn Holke, when he said years ago, back in 2018 or 2019, that the German people have this monument of shame, speaking about the Holocaust memorial in Berlin. He said it's a memorial of shame, and we need a 180-degree shift in how we see the Holocaust, and this is what this is about. And if you can get people to ignore history, if you can convince enough people to ignore the evils of history, then you can repeat the evils of history. You can get people to ignore the evils of history. And when the evils of history happen again, you can then repeat the pretexts that were utilized to justify the evils of history. It's just so simple. It's just so simple, guys. It's so damn simple. That's why I keep telling people, genocide is justified by facts. Genocide is justified by facts. I've been saying this since 2023, that genocide is always, every genocide in history was not done after somebody woke up and said, I want to kill people. Genocides were always done after a number of evil individuals pointed to real problems and then said, here are the problems. And then the masses say, look, these people are actually talking about the problems. And they're saying that they want to find the solution for those problems. What's the solution? And the solution is something evil, something murderous, something diabolical, and the people eat it right up. And they don't give a shit. This is how genocides are done. They are always done under pretexts. And if you cannot understand that genocides are done under pretext, then you will fall for the pretext. Because whatever genocide happens in the future, it's going to come with pretexts to justify it. And people will fall for it. You already see it in Israel. You've already seen it in Azerbaijan, where you see Azeris praising the beheadings of Armenian civilians. Because in their minds, in the minds of the Azeris, the Armenians took away their true God-given territory. And the Armenians brutalized the Azeris. So therefore, we have the right to get some poor elderly Armenian guy and behead him and film it for fun. You see how the devil works? Satan has been around since forever. He's been around for thousands of years. People don't realize that you can't outsmart the devil. If you had to gauge the devil as a Elden Ring character, the devil is high on all the stats. Intelligence, endurance, arcane, yup. You ain't gonna outsmart him. That's why you need Jesus. That's why you need God. Because you're not gonna outsmart him. Because he's been around way before we have. It's why there's that verse in the Old Testament where God says about the devil, you were in the Garden of Eden with Adam. There's a verse in the Old Testament that says that. It says, speaking of Satan, you were the most beautiful of angels. You were in the garden with Adam, and you were there before the garden. So the devil's been around for a very long time. But the thing is that he's been around for so long that he's not very original. He's not very original. But what he does come up with is ways to repackage and remarket the very things that he already invented. And then he finds the arguments to justify whatever it is that he wants people to do. It's all just regurgitated stuff. And he gets the Muslims to act up. He gets certain people to act up. And then he gets the other side to think, oh, we have to kill all the members of the race of these people who are acting up. And that's how it worked. It's a giant dialectical strategy. The problem is that when you have a society that is just continuously entrenching itself in evil, then something's got to give. There's something, like I said, all evil ideologies or all evil policies are the result of an abuse, or they are the result of an imbalance that is happening. So, for example, if you allow people to just do criminal activities, rob stores, rob people at gunpoint, and then get away with it, eventually what will happen is people are going to get so sick of it that they're going to have a violent reaction, and that violent reaction may not necessarily be just. That's what I'm trying to say. Somehow he convinced a third of the angels to follow him. He is very convincing, absolutely. The Devil's Advocate starring Al Pacino and Keanu Reeves. I guess you could say that. I never really seriously watched that film. In an address to party members this month, Mr. Musk said Germany has too much focus on past guilt. Past guilt. That's the Holocaust. That was a clear reference to Hitler's long shadow. That was a clear reference to the Holocaust, which continues to dominate mainstream German politics. Stop talking about the Holocaust. Stop focusing on the Holocaust. No. Yeah, you killed millions upon millions of people. Sure, you started a war that led to the deaths of 100 million people. Sure, you started a war that led to the deaths of tens of millions of Soviets and millions of Polish people and millions of Jews. Sure, you started a war that led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands, if not a million or so Serbian people. Oh, sure, you started a war that led to the empowerment of Croatian nationalists who did a death camp, a concentration camp called the Jasenovac concentration camp, in which at least 600,000 people were mass murdered. Sure, you caused a war and you established a regime in which you had an entire systematic policy of human experimentation in which you were infecting people with all sorts of diseases, infecting Polish girls with gangrene and then trying to get away with it and trying to hide the evidence. Oh, sure, absolutely, you did all this crazy shit, but stop talking about it so much. If your democracy can be destroyed by a few $100,000 or digital advertising from a foreign country, then it wasn't very strong to begin with. And you know what? He's right. He's right. The fact that the German establishment or the German mainstream parties are terrified of the AfD is quite telling. It means that they are not strong. It means that they are in a weak position. Why do I say that? Because it's the truth. If your influence can be shattered by the rise of this party, you are in a weak position to begin with. And that is quite indicative of the political state that Europe is in, that Germany is in. It's in a state where ultranationalism is now extremely popular. While the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external factor. So let's read this again. This is crazy. Let's read this again, guys. Look what it says. Look at what it says. We also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense. Guys, let's do a little bit of mathematics here. Let's do a little bit of ideological mathematics. So in one breath, he says, we got to embrace the far right. We need to embrace the German far right. And then in the next breath, he says, we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense. So he wants the Nazis to take power over Germany, and he also wants those Nazis to increase the military spending for Germany. Nazism and German militarism. That's what's being pushed. And the Americans don't give a shit because they think, well, we'll just control them. We can contain them. That's what they said about Adolf Hitler. That is exactly what they said about him. You had that von Pappus guy in Hindenburg, whatever his last name was. They pushed for Hitler to be the Chancellor of Germany. And the people who got Hitler to become Chancellor of Germany, they thought Hitler is a maniac baboon. He's a moron. He's a Neanderthal. We can control him. And was that true? It wasn't true. The Americans also supported the reindustrialization and the remilitarization of Germany after World War I. And they lost control of that. And that was another monster that they had to deal with. And this is the problem. They think, oh, well, everything will be fine. Turkey, yeah, they can make their Ottoman Empire revive back from the dead. We don't give a shit. Well, brace yourselves for the next Holocaust. The AfD is the most militaristic party in all of Germany. So why is Vance singling out Germany and supporting the AfD? For this very reason. Because the AfD is not only nationalistic, it's militaristic as well. And the Americans want Germany to bring back its military. So they're rooting for the most militaristic party. So let's look at this article. This was published by the Asia Times recently. Europe will have to see to its own defense. The only major political party with a clear defense strategy is Germany's Alternative für Deutschland, the scrappy populist contender that filled the vacuum on the conservative spectrum after Angela Merkel moved her Christian Democrats towards the left. In a December 22nd, 2024 analysis, we noted that the AfD is the only German party proposing a comprehensive revival of military conscription. The AfD's party platform states, military service is honorable service. It should not be understood, first of all, as an impingement on the fundamental rights of a citizen, but rather as the civic duty to act on behalf of peace and security, and to guarantee the existence of our Deutschland, our country, and its stable democracy. The national army should be anchored in society. What does that mean? And the elimination of conscription has done significant damage to this relationship. What does this mean? The national army must be anchored in society. The AfD has made this clear. They want to integrate militarist culture with German society, with the civilian culture. So we're not just talking about, hiring some soldiers. We're talking about bringing back nationalism and militarism together. And that we're talking about posters on the walls. We're talking about the militarist propaganda. We're talking about all that crazy shit. And the Americans want it. Vance wants it. Trump wants it. Musk wants it. Bannon wants it. All these assholes want it.